This episode is brought to you by Podmatch, the easiest way to connect podcast guests and hosts. We use it to find aligned voices for the ASQ Podcast, and it's how others have found us. Whether you want to share your story or grow your show, Podmatch makes it simple. Scan the QR code on screen or click the link in the description to join. Welcome to the ASQ Podcast, where midlife transitions become your greatest teachers. Have you ever felt like the career you built no longer fits the life you want to live? Today's guest, Amy Adler, is a nationally recognized executive resume writer, job search strategist, and the host of the Job Search Podcast. Together, we explore what it really takes to pivot, reimagine your path, and step courageously into your next chapter, especially when the world says you should have it all figured out. Stay tuned. Hello, Amy. How are you? Thank you so much for being here on the ASQ Podcast.
Hey, hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad to be with you.
Yes, it's so good to see you again. We actually connected before this, but I'm glad I don't know anything about you for the most part because I get to learn everything about you today, and I'm so excited to do that. So are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Awesome. I'm so excited about this conversation. Okay, so I really want to know where you were born, what your family structure is like, if you have any siblings, where did you go to school, where were you brought up? Tell us about your background.
Oh my goodness. So I was born in upstate New York, but I have zero memories of being there because my family moved to the easternmost part of Pennsylvania when I was about 2.
Okay.
And so that to me is sort of home, although I don't know anybody there anymore. Everybody's moved on from the little farming town that I grew up in. My brother showed up soon after that. And so we're 3 years apart. So he's my only sibling, although certainly I've known his wife forever. So she's as much a sister to me as I could ever ask for. And I'm so grateful for her.
That's nice.
So I went to public school. Kind of wherever we lived is where I went to school. So I didn't have a whole bunch of choices, but it was a pretty good experience. And then went to college in Pennsylvania as well. So I went to Franklin and Marshall, whose mascot is the diplomats. So John Marshall and Ben Franklin. So we wonder if they get out on the field and like shake hands and negotiate something and wander off. But
That's funny.
so a small liberal arts school. And I was a Spanish and government major in college.
Do you speak some Spanish?
I understand a lot. I'm sure I
Really?
sound
Okay.
like a befuddled toddler when I speak.
But to understand it, that's
Yeah.
huge.
No, I mean, like I
Huge.
know how to say all the things, but I'm sure I sound terrible. My biggest regret of all of that is that I will never have a native Spanish accent. It was all I ever wanted to do. I studied in Spain. I did these things, and I learned as way too late. Sort of as a teenager, and it was my favorite thing in high school by far,
Really?
and in
Oh, neat.
college too. So I studied, I think, 9 years maybe.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was everything I wanted to do because it was something I thought was beautiful and I loved. But alas, I speak like an American.
It is a very passionate language. So I think even if obviously, if you don't have the accent or whatever, it would throw it off. But the fact that it always blows my mind, and I'm getting off subject, but it always blows my mind when I see somebody who is American or Asian or different, from a different part of the world, and they're speaking Spanish. It blows my mind. So anyway,
Yeah.
I had a cousin who was married to an American lady. She spoke Spanish so fluent. I think she spoke it better than I did. because we were forced to like speak English in the house because my mom needed to learn English. And so I lost my language. I didn't lose the accent or anything. But anyway, I don't want to talk about me. I'm talking about you. But I love that you can understand Spanish. That's amazing.
Yeah. So my receptive language is much better than my, I don't know, productive language. I don't know what the right
Right,
term
right.
is.
That
Um,
makes sense.
and heck knows if you ever want to, talk about, 14th century Spanish poetry. I'm sure I don't remember it anymore, but like that's what we were studying. I was like, how is this going to help me like
Wow.
go out in the
That's
world?
interesting.
But we had to
Okay.
do all this stuff. Um, so in terms of my journey, from that point, I thought I wanted to be like some sort of UN diplomat or something. Uh, and I was studying government, which I loved, and Spanish, which was this deep passion for me. Um, so my first internship in college was at the United Nations Association of the United States of America, the UNA. The UNAs are affiliates in every country, so they do policy research and I guess advocacy. And I got to work down the street from the UN, and I had a badge, and I got to go in all the time and like do gopher type things. I was a teenager, it's my
Right.
second year, I think, of college, and I was just in love, right? This is the most incredible thing. And the end product for the season, I guess for the year, is an annual that they do. This volume of, I guess I don't know, the work that the UNA was doing. And it became a book. And they sent me a copy of the book. I was in my first semester of my junior year, maybe. And I just stood in the mailroom holding this book. Like this was the most miraculous thing I'd ever seen. It was probably pretty dry, and I only had a hand in some small elements of it. But I was like, oh my goodness, there's this book, and I had this, incredible opportunity to help
Right.
make this happen, and my life changed.
Wow.
So I was already a writing center tutor in my school. And I did that for 3 years, but I was already doing that at that point. And I totally changed my direction, and I said, I'm going to go into book publishing. I'm going to be in a position where I can influence what shows up in the printed word somehow. And
Right.
I was all in. And after
Huh.
that, I had 3 additional internships, one in grad school, round one, all in one way or another in book publishing. And it was honestly what I thought I was meant to do in this world professionally from that point. And I um, went to grad school right after that to New York University in their nascent publishing graduate program. I thought, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this right. So that took, a full year of classes, and then a year of writing a thesis. So I've had this, I'm sure you have too, this
Yeah. Just a little.
dubious honor of sitting down at the computer every single night for a year to
Right.
make
You
my
loved it
practice.
though, right?
I think by the end, I think if you don't hate it by the end, you're probably doing something wrong, because you're so invested for so long and so hard, that I think I felt wiped by the end.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, that makes
so
sense.
my thesis was on the New York Times Book Review, the status of women as authors and reviewers over a decade, 2 decades. I can't remember the time frame right now.
Wow, that's
Um,
impressive.
it was fun.
I'll
It
bet.
kind of plugged into my brain. I got to do data analysis that I invented because no one was ever, that didn't exist. And it was nice to see that women really did do better over, the
Yeah.
10, 20 years.
Yeah, yeah.
And had to defend it. Had a panic moment in my defense where someone said, "Why did you do this?" And I really had no idea. I just was so like focused on this specific point that I pursued it, and I couldn't really explain how it mattered in the end. She's like, "Don't worry, you passed." I was like, "Oh, okay." It was
That's
just a small.
nerve-wracking. It's
It
like
was
the worst feeling in the world. I know when I had to do mine, I was like, I thought I didn't know anything, and I'd spent months and
right.
months and months, so I can imagine how you felt.
Yeah. Well, it was a minor point and a minor deviation from the overall process, but I felt really great when it was done. And then I
Yeah.
finished this, and I entered into book publishing, not in New York, mostly because I couldn't afford to live there. But in the northern part of New Jersey, where I got into academic publishing, which is kind of where my um, internships had led me to that point. And after, I don't know, a year or so in that first role, which was essentially a secretary, I mean, really, that's how everybody starts. I moved into book production, which is somebody with a red pencil and laying out
Oh,
stuff on the page and editing and working with authors. And this was amazing. And I did that for a whole bunch of years, both there and then moved on to other things. And I think it will always be my first love. And I never thought I would ever leave sort of that kind of engagement with the written word. It was just everything I wanted to do. And I think I was good at it. I got really good feedback. And I loved helping other people shine, helping authors get what they needed so that their work made an impact. I recall one author that I had worked with on his first book said, I'll sign with you, the publishing company, again, if Amy is my production editor, because she was just so
wow.
good at this. I was like, oh man,
Well,
because
that's
like
an
production editors
honor.
are like the unsung heroes of the process. It's very like invisible to the process, but not to the authors
Oh,
because they interact all the time.
no, because yeah, but I wouldn't have even, this is a new thing I didn't know any of this before you said it. So this is interesting
Yeah. So like
that
the
you
front man is like the people, wining and dining authors,
right.
which to me felt more like sales and didn't, I mean, it's not really sales. I don't really want to call it that. It really does that whole thing a disservice, but I felt like I was selling the company and selling pitching the project and whatever. And I felt more at home, in the quiet of my own mental space with my, pencil in
Yeah.
my hand.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
So can I ask you a question before you move forward? Just because I want to
yeah.
touch on, so you were born in New York, upstate New York, right? And then you're in Pennsylvania and you grow up in this, childhood, this society that you're in, your family life and whatnot. Is there anything about that time that sort of shaped that you think, when you think back on that time period, that may have been something that was that shaped your sense of self in terms of the direction that you went in? Or was it just purely just like, it just happened?
No, it didn't just happen. Um, so I'm sure like you and lots of other, certainly women, but probably men out there too, who learn to read very early and I'm happiest in a library, happiest with a stack of books, a TBR, a mile long. Somebody said to me when I was in fifth grade, as they ask every kid, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Uh-huh.
And I was looking for I think they were looking for the traditional answer. I want to be a teacher. I want to whatever. Um, and I thought computers were really cool, and this was in the 80s, and it was still new and not like something everyone had in their house. And I was like, maybe I could work in
Yeah.
computers. I don't know what, because I don't know how to get there. But also as a girl in the 80s, so maybe girls don't really do science the way they, maybe should have been more encouraged to do. So I didn't know what. So I said, is there a job where all I get to do all day is read books? Like that would be really cool. And of course, I got laughed out of the room on that.
Yeah.
So
I don't mean to be laughing, but yes.
yeah. Well,
Kind of cute.
yeah. So in my dream world, I wanted to be surrounded by stacks of books all day long, and
Mhm.
I didn't know what that meant. But in fact, I did find a job where all I was doing all day was reading books. Obviously, there's way more to getting a book out the door than just reading it.
Right.
But that was the closest I was ever going to come. Um, so to be fair, I never really envisioned myself as a writer. Um, Lots of kids say when I want to be a writer when I grow up, and I was like, I want to be an editor. I want to, and especially by the time I got into college, I was like, I understand my place in this world, and I want to make other people's writing better because I know that I can do this, and
Wow.
I have a feel for it, and I love grammar. That's a weird
Right.
fun fact about me is I love grammar, um, and
So it
and
was a pretty clear cut thing. You just knew.
I did just know,
Okay.
but I knew it in a sense that I was going to do this one kind of thing. And I had no idea, even after finishing at NYU and getting a master's degree and graduating, um, I, I was all in on this path to
Yeah.
working in book publishing. Um, but book publishing is notoriously low paying, unless you can stick around for 20 years. And, I had rent, I had car payments, like every other person, right? I had all these things. And I was like, this is painful all the time. So what am I going to do?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
literally, what am I going to do? So, on almost a whim with not a lot of thinking behind it, I decided I was going to apply to business school. And I wasn't that kind of person. I mean, I was project managing and doing budgets and whatever, but I never thought of myself as a business person. I thought myself as an editorial person. So I was like, I don't know where I'm going with this. And I was living in Boston at the time and didn't really want to leave Boston for personal reasons. So I was like, what am I going to do? So I studied. I went all in on the GMAT class because I hadn't had math in like a long time.
Just hearing that word scares me. For
Well,
anybody who doesn't know what that is, I think everybody knows what that is. Oh, yeah.
The GMAT, yeah, the admissions test.
Yeah.
Or so like the SAT for college, it's like the SAT. This is for grad school, for business school.
Yeah. I
And
never want to hear that word again.
and yeah, it's set up the same way with math and verbal. And the
Right.
verbal was, straight up my alley because I could totally do
Right.
it.
Of course.
So I studied like a crazy person. And I think because of that, if I'm not, breaking my arm to pat myself on the back, I did really well. And I think for that reason, I was offered a full scholarship to Boston College's business school,
Oh,
which
wow.
I
That is
could not
impressive.
turn down.
No.
Because,
Wow.
yeah, so I quit a job at that point that I just loved, a company that I loved. I think my boss looked like a deer in the headlights when I said, hey, this thing happened, and I don't know how I can say no.
Right.
And I'm sure her, in retrospect, her first thought was, oh my goodness, now I have to fill a spot in my team. What am I going to do? But I was like, holy moly, I have this incredible opportunity. I have no idea where it's going to go.
Sure.
So, so I was a very non-traditional business school student. Everyone, like, first day of school, sat next to a CPA in accounting class, which I'd never done before. And I was like, how's this fair? But she was super nice. It wasn't about her, but I was like, my goodness, I feel so completely out of my element.
Yeah, no, I get that.
But I absolutely, tore it up in sort of human resources and organizational development compared to people who had never, had the kind of the opportunity to write about the things that came with, running a team or managing, a business from that point of view. And that felt really good. So,
Right.
so that's how I got kind of the education element. I hope I'm answering your question the way, your original question.
Yeah, no, I think I'm just, for some people they are, when you're born into a family, right? And your surroundings sort of dictate your sense of self, right? For a lot of people. And so some people, their parents are like, you got to go to college, you got to do this, you got to do that. And I was just curious as to if any of those things affected or pushed you in the direction, but it sounds to me like you had a love for books and a love for, you knew that this is what you wanted to do. And so I want to hear your story because I know there's more to this. So continue, please.
Well, on the psychological side, I think I used reading as just as a form of entertainment. Like I wasn't super into television, I wasn't super into movies, but also I'm quite honestly a form of escapism. Like I had a great family, right? My parents were married up until my father's passing a few years ago. He was an engineer. My mom was a social worker by training, but sort of worked with the aging population and typical middle class, like nothing special. Like they're, we were all well fed and, roof over our heads, but, nothing particularly special. But definitely focus on education, expectation that we would go to school. But for me, it was, this is the thing that matters to me most. As a little kid, my brother, as an adult, he once said, he's like, half the time, I didn't even know where you were. You had your nose in some book doing something. Like, I'm like, yeah, that was pretty much what I was doing.
Right. Okay.
Just
so
living
then
me and siblings too.
You go into this, so you're in school doing business classes, and then you're working at the same time doing the at the publishing, or what
No,
are you
this was
doing?
full time, so I had to quit
Okay.
work. I had to quit work
Okay.
to accept the
Okay.
scholarship,
Okay.
because it was an absolute. I mean, I had just made a complete 180 in my life, and I had no idea what I was getting myself into. But I was like, well, I'm here,
That's
and
interesting.
I've been offered this unbelievable opportunity, and I should take advantage of it in every way that I
Okay.
can.
Right.
So I was working at the school. Part of my obligation was to work a lot at the school. But I got to work in the publications office, so that was pretty easy from that point of view.
Nice.
So like PR stuff and design and writing. You know, I was just an intern, so or
Yeah.
whatever, a student worker. So it wasn't like I had a lot of responsibility, but at least it was an environment I was familiar with.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So then
So
what?
then I moved to Minnesota with my
Mhm.
husband, and I worked in consumer health content. So couldn't get away from that editorial aspect, although I wasn't doing any writing. I was doing mostly relationship management with partners that were using Mayo content um, back in the day. Um, and actually, this is where the story turns.
I'm
So,
excited.
well, it became interesting, and in retrospect, I think it's the only way that it could have happened, and I'm really glad that it did. But it set me on the path to becoming a resume writer.
Hmm.
So all the way through my publishing career, I'd always done freelance work because, like I said, it was notoriously low paying, and I had, a bare minimum of, expectations that I would sort of eat every day and have a car and, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So,
Our necessities, right?
right. So a bunch of roommates, all of us doing all
Mhm.
different stuff, trying to
Of
survive.
course. To
So,
survive, yep.
well, so we were married for, I guess, a couple of years, and we had our first child. And my husband and I were about to move again. We moved all over the place because he was going to get some additional training um, back in Boston, where where we had been living before, where kind of near where I went to grad school. Um, so I was like, well, I can have this baby and I can return to work for, take my family leave and then return for not a lot of time, whatever it was. Or I can just say, well, I am now going to be a stay-at-home mom because I can't get a job in Boston for 6 months because that won't work. What am I going to do?
Mm.
Um, so I stopped working and was a full-time parent, which was like running 100 miles an hour and then stopping and having
Mhm.
this whole new responsibility,
Yeah, it's a major
arguably
shift.
a bigger responsibility. I was entirely in charge of this human being's life.
Yeah.
Um, and then she was, then I had another kid, and our kids are 19 months apart. So that was a wild trip. They're now adults and mostly happy, mostly well adjusted. I think they'd agree with me.
Right.
And they're in their 20s.
Nice.
Um, but once I had the opportunity to return to work, I was like, okay, now what am I going to do? And this was when our second was in kindergarten. So I was not working for about 6, 7 years.
Mm.
I was like, well, I'll go back into freelancing because I can work during the day and pick up the kids after school and figure out what I'm going to do with my life from that point of view. And that proved to be harder than I thought it would be. Um, so I cast about for a while. At the same time, a friend of mine who was a great salesperson, um, not a great writer, said, hey, I know you came from like writing or whatever it was you did because no one really knew what I did. She said, I need a resume and because I want to like talk to this job and whatever. Can you help me? So I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, apart from the resumes I'd written for myself.
Mhm.
So we got on the phone and I asked her a bunch of questions. I sort of put on my business versus editorial hat, which is really kind of the intersection of what this whole thing became, and helped her out, got her this resume, sent it to her, and she applied, got the interview, and got the job.
Oh, wow.
I was like, okay, maybe there's something there.
Right.
So I looked around, and as most people in my industry do, started working for somebody else. So I made no money, a laughable amount of money.
Right.
But I wrote, I don't know, 150 resumes in my first year, which is given the amount of time I had. Well, that's a lot no matter who you are, but given the amount of time that I had while my kid was in kindergarten, which is not a lot of time, um,
Right.
it was crazy. It was just wild. And I learned so much so fast. It was trial by fire. got better at it, got certified, which is the sort of trial by a jury of your peers, if you will,
Yeah.
because you have to pass a panel of experts that your work is good. And then I applied for, well, I guess I worked for a couple of years, and I think along the way maybe I applied once, entered the Tory Awards, the Toast of the Resume Industry Awards, and of course I didn't even place. And I was like, okay, well, that is no fun. And I might have entered once or twice. I can't remember how many years it was before my first award, which was first place for Best Executive Resume, which is like
Wow.
there's a bunch of categories, but the executive market is pretty intense. So I kind of felt like I won an Oscar. It was really
I was
awesome.
going to say it's an honor. It's definitely an honor to what you're doing and the work that you've put in over all the years that you've, you know, uh, did this. Let me ask you a question really quick, just because I want to kind of highlight that shift. So you went from, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm trying to piece everything together and I'm hearing this all for the first time, right? So you move to Minnesota, and at this point you're taking a break, basically,
Um,
because you're staying home with your children, right?
well, I was working in Minnesota. I was working at Mayo, and then
Okay. Right. You were working there,
yeah.
but then you had children and you decided you were going to stay home. Was
Mhm.
there a space in that where you felt that, you've decided that you're going to stay home with your children? Did you feel at all that you had lost any sense of identity now, becoming a full-time
Yeah,
mom for
full-time
years?
mom. It was really hard.
Was it?
Um,
Talk to
it
me
was,
about that.
yeah. Well, um, my children and my husband are the most important humans on this planet to me, and I would walk through fire for them. I would do anything at all for them, and I think they know that.
Of course.
Um, but in the process, at least in the beginning, was like, wow, I wake up in the morning, I don't put shoes on, you know, grab coffee. At one point, I was making my lunch, like eating my breakfast and making my lunch before the children woke up, so I would actually be able to eat in the middle of the day. Like it was,
Mhm.
a lot of
Yeah.
work for them,
Mhm.
because any parent will say that. I'm not unique by any
Of
stretch,
course. No,
but
no, I
it
get
did
it.
feel like my brain was all about mommy, mommy, mommy.
Right.
And I reminded myself that this is the most important job I'll ever have,
Right.
and that I am really, really lucky. I could use the word privileged to be able
Yeah.
to do this.
Of course. Yeah.
And our circumstances were such that I could do this. And I was grateful. And I
Right.
reminded myself to be grateful, because to let that slip away, there was nothing else underneath
Mhm.
that, except, um, you know, a sense of frustration that I was only doing this.
Right.
And to say, only in quotes is, um, doesn't do justice to what it means to be a parent. And
Right.
it doesn't make me a perfect parent. It just made me a busy one.
Yeah.
So
But it still doesn't, even with that privilege, it is a change in your life. And it's a decision, a conscious decision, obviously, that you make because you have children and they need to be taken care of. And sometimes I feel, at least for me, it was like, okay, they are the most important beings on this planet and I want to give them the best. And so now I have to shift my mindset to, okay, now I'm full-time mother. I'm no longer working. I'm not contributing it, I'm doing air quotes as well, to society in the normal, going to work, doing those types of things. I'm contributing in a different way
mhm,
by contributing to my children, right? But I feel like a lot of times what happens is we lose our sense of self, because I too went through that. I would get up in the morning, I would throw my hair in a ponytail. I think my hair was down to, it's longer than it is today. And I didn't put on makeup. I didn't, everything was about my kids. I would go to the supermarket, but I was going in essentially in a muumuu. Um, but I feel like that. So fast forward to then, for in your story, you start working again and you realize, okay, I have this thing that I think I could do, which is resume writing. So how was and you came across, you make it sound so like, oh, I just came across this. It was just, it must have been there. What were there self-doubts? Were there any sort of challenges that you had to overcome internally to set your mind in that direction of, this is, I think, something that I could do? I mean, you won an award, so clearly you are an amazing writer, and you know what you're doing. You have this talent. So I don't want to take away from that, but what internal challenges did you have to overcome? Because a lot of people are filled with doubt about their talents. And you're not telling me that in the way that you're telling me the story. It sounds like you were like, I think I'm going to do this. And it's, but were there any internal things that were going on inside of you that made you think or question, am I doing the right thing? Should I go this way? Because this is like your call to the adventure in this hero's journey, right? I mean, it sounds like you've had several, but this is like a pivot in what you were doing. You're like now representing, it's similar to what you were doing, but you're representing in a different way. You're representing people. So talk to me about.
So I never thought I would be a writer. Like that was just not what I wanted to do. In fact, I remember, in every little kid's life, they have to like take all their spelling words and turn them into a story or whatever. Um, and I always
Hated
thought that
that.
was well, I remember thinking to myself, I've already thought out the story. I know how it's going to end. Why do I need to write it on paper? Like I know like the conclusion, like and the mechanics of putting it on paper was just not that fun. But I knew that I wanted to make other people's presence better. So I obviously became a capable writer. Like I knew what I was doing in terms of like getting things on paper from the time, rather compared to when I was like, 10.
Right.
As an adult, I knew what I was doing. So I wasn't afraid of the writing, although I don't know where the very first resume that I wrote for a client is, and I'd be terrified to look at it now. This is like 16 years later.
Right.
I hope I've learned something
Things have
along the way.
changed.
Things have changed. Uh, but I think the fears that plagued me then, um, some of them stay. Like I'll say the things that didn't stay. Um, I used to be really, really worried all the time that the business wouldn't grow, that I wouldn't find clients, that people would hear about me and write me off. And I mean, maybe that happens and I don't know about it. But I seem to have a full calendar most of the time and I feel really good. And I realized some number of years into the process that I wasn't worried every day about, will I have another client? Will I have another client? Like it wasn't so much of a surprise when people agreed to hire me because I was, proving myself. But the thing that has stayed, and I guess this is true for anybody who is in any kind of service role or any kind of um, consulting kind of arrangement, I I call it send button anxiety, which is I'm have the email done. I think the materials that I prepared are finished. I have everything set up, and I just can't click send on that email until I feel like I have to like close my eyes and jump. Just
I
yesterday, same
get it.
problem. It's same thing.
Okay.
So,
That's interesting. That's funny. I've never heard it called
no, I
send
made it up.
buttonings. I love that.
I
I
totally made
may
it
have
up.
to put that in quotes and put your name underneath it. That's amazing. Because I think a lot of people go through that. I think, you're still questioning, even though you have some success and you're doing this and you have a full calendar, you still feel that level of anxiety. Do
Yes.
you think that's because because I'm imagining that you have to meet with these people and you're taking um their stories, their background, the things that they have shared with you that they may not share with other people, and putting it now on paper, and you're going to send it back, and you're hoping that that you highlighted them in a way that makes them like feel like, oh my God, this is amazing, right?
That's what you hope for.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's
but
a lot of anxiety.
but I would say the thing that's threaded through all the things that I have done is and I will share also, I was a stage manager in college in theater, so I was not a performer, and I kind of got thrown into it, and the story's probably not worth telling, but it's the same kind of thing, which is I am always in the background, and I'm always going to try to make somebody else look better or
Right.
do better or feel better or succeed.
Yeah.
And I mean, and I guess I'm still wearing black, but like in theater, if you're in behind the scenes, you're dressed completely in black. And business wise, I am dressed in black, and I am happiest when I get to make people look good. Because I look good when they look good, even if no one else
Of
sees it.
course. Of course. Absolutely. Let me ask you this then, because I think this is an interesting, it just came to me. You are dealing then with people. You've gone through this evolution of your own, this transformation. Now you've sort of evolved into, okay, this is my thing. This is what I want to do. Apparently, you're feeling like, okay, this is my passion. I want to make people look good. How do you deal with people who are now, a lot of these people are either, and this is what we talk about on ASQ, is they've hit this wall where they've either lost their job, they're not feeling that role fits them anymore, and they want to do something else. They're in their own pivot, right? So you've experienced your pivot, your transformation, and you've found your groove. How do you talk to these people without giving a lot of private things away, but just a general overview? These are people that are questioning everything about their life, I'm imagining, because I know when I have asked somebody to look at my resume or write a resume for me, it was because I was going through this very challenging time and there was a lot of change going on in my life, and I had to move from what I thought I knew into something else, which is again what we talk about on ASQ. What is that like for you, and how do you deal with people like that, and how do you encourage them and build them up? And considering your own transformation and evolution into what you're doing now, how do you deal with that with other people? Because I'm sure you face that quite a bit.
Yeah, every day. And I appreciate the question. And I think it's the kind of question that people don't ask enough
Mhm.
is how, as a resume writer, where's the intersection between sort of the production of the document, the investigation that comes before, um, and the coaching that goes along with it. It's not visible. Again, it shouldn't be visible. That's
Right.
um,
Right.
something I think any resume writer has to come to terms with, which is like you're going to be invisible.
Yeah.
Um, so I think the primary thing is to make sure people feel safe. And I'm not a therapist. I don't have that kind of training. I would never claim to have that expertise, although every resume writer I know has heard their clients say at one point or another, wow, you feel like my therapist. Definitely not. Uh, and I get to be their advocate. I get to be their sounding board, but I also have the privilege of just opening the floor to them and say, tell me what is on your mind. I call myself the black hole. You could say anything. I'm never going to talk about you, right? No one's going to ever know we ever worked together until you tell somebody, or if you tell somebody. And I know you, Mr. or Miss Client, like I know you're going through a lot. And most people don't do job search, but a handful of times in their lives.
Mhm.
I do this every single day, and I have seen a lot. And if I haven't seen it, if you tell me something and I don't know the answer, I'll find it. But whatever you have to offer up to
Mhm.
this conversation, I receive it. I am glad that you are sharing what you are sharing, that you are trusting me, and I care. I have found fundamentally care.
Mhm.
Um, and I think people in job search don't have that kind of a partner in the other players in the ecosystem. So recruiters, amazing people. There's no shade here at all.
Right.
So
Of
recruiters
course.
are great, but their obligation is to their client, the company, not the job seeker.
Mhm.
Hiring managers just want to fill the role. And they won't care about that person until they're in the role, that kind of a thing. Whereas I get to say, let me walk this journey with you from today until you don't need me anymore. And then you stay friends, hopefully, and we'll, pick it up in the next round or whatever you want to do.
Right.
And I don't think they have that, um, well, I would say objective
Mhm.
um, partner, but it's not that I don't care. It's that there's just, I have a lot of experience. So I want to bring this to the conversation because that's an obligation that I should have.
Right.
So I hope that people feel in the end that they can be very real and open about what they love about their careers, what they hate about their careers.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen every range of emotion from people about all these things, from abject sadness and crying, like people crying on the phone because they
Yeah.
are so distraught, um, people at risk of deteriorating mental health, um, people who are glad to be done with that company because they were this, that, or the other, kind of an organization that did things I didn't like, and I'm glad to be done with them. So
Yeah.
let's go do this.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
I am wide open to the world and I can take this in any direction. And I hope that you, meaning me, I hope that, you'll walk with me and I'll find my North Star and it'll be amazing. So I get
Yeah.
like everything.
I'll bet. I'll
And
bet. That's crazy.
people are amazing,
Yeah.
smart
Yeah. Yeah.
and genuine and
Mhm.
thoughtful and frightened, um, and happy all at the same time.
Right.
People are complex. I guess that's
It's
not news, right?
beautiful. But it's such a beautiful thing, isn't it? That people have so many that they are complex, right? It's just
Mm.
like I find people fascinating. And one of my favorite things to do is when me and my husband are traveling or whatever, go to the airport and just watch people because you see so much when they don't know that you're watching them. And that sounds kind of like weird, but people watching people, it's a normal
Sure.
thing. You're sitting at somewhere, you notice people and you see things and people they are very complex. Human beings are complex, right? So I want to ask you one more question that is kind of this leads into this one, and this will be my final question for you. You have a book called Courageous Career Change. Am I right? I hope
Mhm.
because I didn't write it down. Okay, good. What courageous career change? What does that look like for people um who have hit this road or hit this block and had this mind frame that this is what they were going to do forever, and now they're in this moment of disillusionment, I guess, if you will. Can you just briefly tell me, like, what does it look like for somebody who's built their life around this thing for them to pick up your book and, what does that look like for them? I think it's
So
so different for everybody. That's why. And I'm just curious to know what your book offers individuals that are so disillusioned by, oh my God, this is what I thought I was going to do for the rest of my life. And now here I am at this pivotal like intersection.
I appreciate the question. And I want to preface my answer with I am I hope what I do has strategic value and that I'm thinking about it and being thoughtful about, writing every word. But the resume, LinkedIn profile, cover letter, bio, thought leadership, whatever it is, these are tactical outcomes of the engagement that I would have with people. And there's other ways we can do things, but I am very much I hire me and I will do things for you. I will make this easier for you because you can forget about this and wait for the deliverable. So much of what I talk about in the book is how do you enact these steps once you decide where you want to head. But holistically, if someone needs permission, not that I can convey it, I don't own it, but um, and I've had people do this for me too. Like if you need permission, you now have permission. Like I don't know who gave me the right to give you permission, but if you're looking for permission, I confer it upon you. And I hope people who read that will feel the same, that they have permission to let go of what they were doing before, get out of their own way. So I thought this was back in the day when I did the book was about, I thought so much about why people are afraid of all these changes. And change can be getting a different job in the same field in a different title. It doesn't have to be, trashing everything that I've ever done and starting over. Um, but to get um, into a point, a place of, I won't say, maybe equilibrium is the right term. I won't say comfort, where fear is on one side and optimism and the future is on the other. And it's okay to let the other things go to make space for things that going to help them, whether it's in a strategic sense or a tactical sense. And if I can be part of that process anyway, I'm really glad to do it. But if people just can get to a point where they are confident about the fact that the world won't fall apart if they make a new choice, a reasonable choice,
Right.
then that's so freeing. And I hope they can embrace themselves and embrace the change as they do it.
That's a beautiful way to end this conversation. I love it. Thank you so much. If anybody that's listening to us or watching us wanted to reach out to you and connect with you, how would they do that?
So my website is fivestrengths.com. That's FIVESTRENGTHS.com. And I'm always on LinkedIn, and my handle is my first name, middle initial, last name, Amy L. Adler. So I welcome all connections.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Amy. This has been a very, very, very lovely conversation. I'm so glad that we finally got to connect. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us on the ASQ podcast, and a big thank you to Amy Adler for sharing such grounded and soul-stirring wisdom on career reinvention. To connect with Amy, visit her at fivestrengths.com. Until next time, find meaning, navigate change, live and lead fully.